that is securing your position on the river. You are the one collecting money from everybody passing by. The present structure dates back from the 14th century and was restored in 1854 to 1858 in neo-Gothic style. Then it was no longer a toll station, became a signaling station. And in 1972, the tower was painted in the medieval colors it wears nowadays. So the legend concerns the Archbishop Hatto III. In the year 969, there was a serious famine here in the region, and the people of Bingen and the surrounding villages were starving. They really tried to talk to the Archbishop and make him sell the grain that they knew he had in his granaries, but the Archbishop refused. He wished to wait till the price rose even higher. And eventually then, at some point, the starving peasants marched on the Archbishop's palace and showed that they wouldn't take no for an answer. Hatto ordered the doors of the granary to be opened, and everybody rushed in. He closed the doors and set the barn on fire. He stood outside laughing at the screams of the dying peasants, and at that moment, a plague of mice issued from the barn. Hatto tried to escape to the little island and inside the tower. However, the mice got him, and they say only a skeleton was to be found when the mice were done with the Archbishop. A wonderful castle to visit because it has quite some inside collection as well. There's furniture, there's paintings, there's armor. And what you can see from the distance, it has different parts. So if you would start from the lower part, you see the little chapel. So you can get married up there as well. Then you note the umbrellas. That's where they have the sun terrace for private receptions. Then the first tower in the front. Later on you can see it's a staircase going up there for the best views. Let me tell you a little bit about Castle Rheinstein, coming up to your left. Some 260 feet above the Rhine, perched on a projecting rock. It was established by the Archbishops of Mainz, also as a toll station, like most of them in the beginning. It was then destroyed and finally rebuilt in its flamboyant neo-Gothic style by the Crown Prince Friedrich of Prussia during the pre-last century. There are guided tours in the castle, as we said, and quite a collection of armor and art treasures. If you get the right angle, when we cruise by and are alongside, you will see it, but now you can note it already if you're standing in front of the boat. The front tower, just above the flag, there is a little cage sticking out. So everybody is always asking, what is that for? That used to be where they displayed prisoners. Because what would you do to scare off any invaders? You would make sure that they know what's waiting for them if they are caught. I haven't seen anybody in the cage for a long time, but you never know. Let's check. Ah, it's empty. So don't mess with the castle owners. If you ever come back here and you want to take one of the little day ships, you see they have their own docking spot here. So you would dock the little ship right there, cross the street and walk up the Serpentines to visit Rheinstein here on the left-hand side. And the next one is coming up right after that. It's ahead of us now. Actually, there's another story that we can share connecting both of the castles, Rheinstein and Rheinfels. That did lead to a happy ending, because finally her father agreed that the two young people could get married. They lived happily ever after, and they're even buried together in the St. Clement's Chapel here to the left. So that's one of the few happy endings of all those wonderful legends that are awaiting us throughout the afternoon. And now, of course, you want to hear a little more about the other castle here, the Reichenstein Castle. Reichenstein was first mentioned in 1213, and it developed very quickly to be one of those dens of robber knights where you had all those robber barons basically besieging the castles because they wanted to collect all the money on their own. It was then destroyed for the first time by the League of Rhenish Cities in 1253. The League of Rhenish Cities was a club that was formed by all those cities along the Rhine here, by all the free cities who wanted to make sure that things are going right and in order. And of course they didn't want the robber barons around here. So first time destroyed in 1253. It was then rebuilt actually by those same robber barons, and then destroyed again in 1282 by the Emperor Rudolf of Habsburg. Then they rebuilt it again and finally destroyed by the French in 1689. It was in ruins then for a long time and rebuilt only around the year 1900 by the great-great-grandfather of the present owner. It's housing an important collection of antlers and weapons. It is open to the public, so you could visit it, and you see a 1000. And then in the 13th century, it was already notorious as a den of the robber knights. As we said before, they just invaded those castles and collected all those river tolls while they stole from all the people going by, let's be honest and true here. Then the castle was besieged and destroyed by the Emperor Rudolf of Habsburg when he tried to solve that problem of the robber barons once and for all in the middle of the 13th century. Rebuilt again only to be laid in ruins another time by the French. Yes, we know that by now, 1689. Then rebuilt in 1834 in neo-Gothic style, and you can see that the architecture and the attention to details, although it's so many years ago, was already amazing. Sonic Castle here to your left hand side. Yeah, and now you can also see the transportation structure for loading the ships right from the stone quarry. That is what's left of Honeck Castle. It's privately owned. Sometimes we see the owners having barbecue here on the terrace and they wave to us. And now, looking ahead, we have two of the next castle ruins coming up. However, it's very hard to see them if you don't know what to look for. Let's start with the first one that is straight ahead. If you look straight ahead, where you have the trees and the vineyards, just up there where the last trees are before you go to the left to the vineyards, it's a little square tower, a dark square tower. That is the last remaining tower of Burg Nollich. About 500 feet above the town. This is the only still standing tower from the original structure of the 11th century. Only this tower has been rebuilt and it's a private home. It's sort of a, people choose to live an hermit life. I don't know how they get their groceries up there, but it is privately owned and somebody's living up there. The other structure you see on the left-hand side. Now you have the day ship coming by, and if you then look sharp left, let's say about 10, 11 o'clock, you see a spotted color round tower. That is the ruin of Castle Fürstenberg. Castle Fürstenberg was originally built in 1219, like most of the others, as a toll station. This one was then in 1632 captured by the Swedish army during the 30 Years' War. and then in 1689 it was destroyed to its present state. For example, this castle has a long history of having new owners that try to rebuild it. But of course it's not very easy. You can buy it for very little money. Most of the castles here, if you buy a ruin, it's available for small money, but you have to guarantee that you are able to improve the state of the present structure. But of course those walls have seen a lot and are there for a long, long time. So it is complicated, but we hope one day you can get the ruin at least in a state that you can visit it again. At the moment it belongs to a couple that lives right here close by the castle, and they try their best to get all the permits and everything established to do some works on Fürstenberg. So on the right, the final standing tower of Burgruine Nollich, and on the left the remains of Castle Fürstenberg here in ruins. And now you'll have a short moment to breathe before we are getting to our next castle. Since we are going with the stream, we are of course much faster than we would be. All those houses here nicely along the river. Of course this is the best view, and if you live here this is what you want to have. However, the river can rise and fall in water level very, very fast. So those people living here, they know that they have to count with wet cellars, wet underground basements every winter. So they know already when the water is going up, then that will be the moment when they can get ready to take everything out of their cellars, and later on they will pump all the water out, dry it, and get over and done with it. It's sort of a routine that you are willing to accept when you live here. The newer constructions, they are basically already prepared for that, so you would then just simply not have any cellars underground. You would just have living quarters starting on street level. And now we are coming very, very exciting to our next most known castle, Stahleck Castle, and with our wonderful weather that you brought us. I think it's the adventure guys being responsible for the sunshine this afternoon. Now you get the magnificent view on Stahleck with the tower and the half-open courtyard and all the vineyards around it. So Stahleck is basically overlooking the small town of Bacharach, everything about wine here. And first mentioned in 1135, destroyed later by the French in 1689, the part of the castle that was rebuilt after original plans in the year end of the century is used to be on field trips in the area sometimes, as you are when you are a student. So we arrived here in Bacharach by train, and then our teachers made us walk all the way up to the youth hostel in the castle. And I've never been known to pack light, so that was quite a hard walk up there. And once we arrived, we just found out that there's a bus going up. Well, if you want to ever sleep in a castle, of course you can do so, although it is a youth hostel, but it's not like in the old days that you have to be under 18 to sleep in the youth hostel. You can become a member of the German Youth Hostel Association at any age, and then you could sleep in the youth hostel. They do not only have dorms like they have in our memories, but they also have a couple of double rooms, and there's a nice restaurant. It's a beautiful way of exploring some of those local castles. To your left, Stahleck Castle in all its beauty up there on the and Victor Hugo, the French writer, described it as a ship of stone eternally floating on the Rhine. It was built as an island fortress, of course, again, for the purpose of collecting river tolls. After the toll station in the Middle Ages, the Pfalz became a signaling station and even by German standards, it is a unique structure that can be visited. You go on a little boat and you come and visit the Pfalz here, just in front of us in the middle of the river. And of course then the castle up on the hill is Gutenfels. Literally it means good rock. So Good Rock Castle up there dates back to 1257, and it has been successfully defended against an attacking army for an entire year in 1504. In 1807 then Napoleon sold the castle as a stone quarry, and 70 years later they started to restore it to be a hotel. So now we are going by the Pfalz here, the river fortress, and Gutenfels Good Rock Castle up there on the hill, nowadays being a hotel. And another ferry boat here to the left with cars already loaded on it, so they will then go over to the other side of the river, because remember, there is no voyages right here. And you are in for a surprise, surprise, surprise. I know that there are 4 adventure guides on the way with a surprise. Ah, give them a great hand. You see them with a big giant pretzel. Yay, it's time for picture taking. In the year 1166. The taxes that were collected by the lords of the castle, only gathered from the Rhine traffic, made them become one of the richest and most powerful families on the Rhine. It remained in the possession of the family until it was then destroyed by the troops of Louis XIV, and in 1885 they began restoring works. Today, one of the castle parts is housing a hotel and the other one a youth hostel. You see both parts that are connected here on the left-hand side, Schönburg Castle. And then we are approaching Oberwesel. Oberwesel is the city of towers. You have about 16 of the original 18 towers left. You can start counting and get an impression of Basel coming up here to the left. Some of those towers belong to the original Roman walls and were part of the city towers. While you are taking your pictures with your wonderful adventure guides, with your beautiful hosts here on our Ama Waterways, we actually approach the part where we will go by the river authorities, because we come to the narrowest part of the river. You would never believe that this is what it is, but they have a tiny little office, I tell you, when we go by, and from there they send messages to all the ships. So this is what you hear here in the background. That is basically the communication here in the back, because we have to confirm with them. So Captain Arya just called the river authorities and told them we are the Ama Waterways, we are a passenger ship with so and so many people on board, and we will be going by into the narrow stretch. And they said, yep, we are allowed to go by.
The towers are just randomly placed amongst their houses. Obviously, it's the other way around.
No, it's static electricity.
wine stocks and the grapes before you would send a person up there, so you wouldn't make up all your way for nothing. And here on the right hand side you see a giant sandbank. Well, I have to tell you that you do not see that always. So this is always depending on the water level. I told you that the Rhine is very moody and water is going up and down very fast. So at the moment you see the sandbank very easy visible, and this is how the Rhine is. And there is always the danger to have a sandbank or to have some rocks underneath. Later on, in a short distance where you see the crane over there in the distance, just behind that, you will see that there is actually some quite sharp quartzite rocks there in the water. This is why we need to stay within the navigation line here within the marked green and red buoys. And we are getting towards the most famous part of the Middle Rhine stretch. We are getting close to where you know about the story of the Lorelei. Not there yet, but if you are still looking for your cameras or anything, that would be a good moment so you're ready when we are going by. If I can play a part of the song for you while we are going by Lorelei, and you will see it written on the wall there, as you see always the names of the places we are going by written. So you will have Lorelei coming up there very soon while we are going by the famous Lorelei Rock. So that was the first part of the famous Lorelei song, the poem that became so popular that a song was created out of it. And Lorelei Rock, the last bit you can see still when you turn around here on your right hand side. Nowadays, up on the top where you have the flags, you do have an open air concert stage. It's of course a great opportunity if you have the chance to have one of your favorite bands or singers performing up at the Lorelei. And if you're very disappointed now that you didn't see her being there seated on the rock, well, we will very soon go by on the right hand side, the front of the tip of land that you see with the flag. Probably you can see that when you look to the right, let's say 1 o'clock-ish, and there is the statue of Lorelei, because it was decided that it can't be that there's no personification of her. The best picture of her you would get once we are past, and then you turn around so you can actually get a picture from the front. If you come back to this part of the world, then you will be able to take a little boat and sit on Lorelei's lap. And now we are approaching more castles. You have the next one coming up here right in front of us. This one is Katz Castle, word Katz. Katz means cat in German. And of course there is a famous joke about this castle and another one which is called Mouse Castle. I will come back to that later. It's called Katz Castle because the owners who built it were the Counts of Katzenelnbogen. You see it just ahead of us. It's overlooking St. Goarshausen, and it was destroyed, of course, by the French and then rebuilt in 1896 to 98. Nowadays it houses a natural science boarding school. It has a great view on the Lorelei, one of the most famous views on the river. It's not open to the public though. So now if you turn around, you will see on the right hand side the statue of Lady Lorelei, and ahead of us Katz Castle overlooking St. Goarshausen.
She appears to be in all her glory.
You would swallow Mouse Castle and just, you know, take it into your own possession. It didn't ever happen though, they didn't even try, because Katzenelnbogen, the counts owned Katz Castle and Rheinfels. So this is Mouse Castle nowadays, privately owned, not to be visited, but one of the most beautiful castles when it comes to architecture. Alright, so let's have a look. The two castles to be concerned here are the castles of Sternberg and Liebenstein. Castle Sternberg dating back to the 12th century and has at times been owned by the emperor and also by the archbishops of Trier. Then after 1568 it was uninhabited and used as a stone quarry for building stone. Of course, if it's just standing around and nobody takes care of it, so the locals took stone away to build their houses. In 1970 then, part of the castle was reconstructed and used as a residence. It's open to the public and there's a restaurant up there. The castle is owned by the state of Rhineland-Palatinate. So that's the one, that's Sternberg, and the other one is Castle Liebenstein, perhaps about 100 years younger than Sternberg, from which it is separated by a screen of walls. We will talk about that when you can see it, and that's of course part of the legend and the story as well. Also there is a restaurant up on the castle grounds right now. It's privately owned and partially preserved and open to the public. So these two castles that you see coming up there now, the white tower and the darker tower, are connected with a story. It's the story about the enemy brothers, one of the most famous ones here along the Rhine. Here how it goes. Long ago, once upon a time, the widowed lord of Sternberg lived in the castle with his two sons. One day he took in a distant relative who had been orphaned. Of course, the little orphaned was a girl, and she grew up as a playmate of the two boys. And you know what happens. In time, both of the boys fell in love with her. Her name was Angela. The older one of the boys, Henry, was very quiet. He was reserved and he did not declare his love. The younger one, the younger brother Conrad, was not so bashful. He made no secret out of his temptatious love for Angela, and it was agreed that Conrad and Angela should be married. Now it happened that at that time a crusade was being organized, and Henry, he decided that there was no point of sitting at home and feeling sorry about himself, so he started to pack his bags to go on the crusade while his younger brother was supposed to marry the love of his life. Well, Conrad, the younger one, the one that was supposed to get married, didn't want to miss out on the fun of a crusade either. He put up his marriage and he insisted on going. Guess what? Of course the younger one went. He was very, strong-headed, so he went ahead, and Henry, being the more responsible of the two, had no choice but to stay at home and look after his ailing father, who died very shortly after Conrad's departure. And of course he had to behave himself. Both of them, Henry and Angela, continued to live in Sternberg. Henry, because of the loyalty to his brother, behaved himself, and Angela waited with a longing heart to return of her beloved Conrad. After 3 long years, Conrad returned from the crusade with a beautiful Greek bride. How could it be? There needs to be a little bit of drama. So, of course, Henry was furious, and the two brothers, according to the tale, met in a duel to death. Luckily, Angela had a bit more, both feet on the ground and sense in her head, so she intervened and put the fight to a stop. Then she decided to took the veil and retired in the monastery that you see here on the right-hand side, on the lower part, right to the riverbanks, the monastery of Kamp Bornhofen. Henry continued to live in Sternberg, and Conrad, with his new wife, took residence in nearby Liebenstein. According to the tale, the two brothers couldn't even stand the sight of each other anymore, and this is why you see that now very nicely. You have the wall that was built to separate the two castles, so they didn't even need to look at each other anymore. Unfortunately, poor Angela very soon died of broken heart, and at the same time the bells were ringing, tolling for Henry, the poor Henry, he died from broken heart as well, because he couldn't live without Angela anymore. Now you still had the other brother, the one with the Greek bride, living up in the castle, but he was not destined to find his luck neither. Therefore, for to explain his wife, the beauty from Greece, wasn't as loyal as he wished for. She ran away with his best friend, and he decided to take his own life. He sprang off the castle walls and found his death on the rocks. Well, tragic and tragic. Of course, all those women are involved here, being the tragic characters. But this was the legend of the enemy brothers' castle, Sternberg and Liebenstein, that you see here still when you turn around, and the monastery of Kamp Bornhofen, where you had Angela living out the last years of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, your adventure guide.